I suppose after yesterday's video, there really is no going back. However, I can now properly begin and word the story proper by saying, as of August of 2021, I have been officially and properly been diagnosed with depression and pragmatic communication disorder. However, up until then, for a very long time, whether I liked it or not, or believed it or not, or whether or not it was true, it was believed that I was on the autism spectrum. And I forgot to explain this yesterday, but specifically it was Asperger's. I forgot to say that yesterday, sorry. Now, for a long time, my diagnosis, regardless of what it was never brought up until I was in 7th grade, when I had said that I'm going to kill you to some kids who were mean to me. Now, for perspective, this happened almost 4 years after the Columbine shootings. So, needless to say, I got myself in a world of trouble for that. Specifically, 4 days of in-school suspension. But it actually would have been a lot worse. In fact, the only reason why it wasn't worse was because some important figures in the school went up to my mother and father and told them, well, really more like threatened / coerced, but whatever, to put me in special education. And so they did. And it was from that moment on, however bad my life was, became infinitely worse. For years, I had to deal with ridicule, rejection, and absolutely nothing could make me feel better. For clarification, normally when you feel bad, you'd want to do something like, have a snack or watch a good movie, listen to some good music, something that's going to take your mind off things and, help you forget. Nothing worked here. Not a thing. Now, students can be cruel, but they're also very smart. They're not going to straight up make fun of a kid for being on the autism spectrum. I mean, if I got in trouble for saying I'm going to kill you to some kid, then you can bet they're going to get in trouble for that. So they would find other ways to, ridicule and humiliate me. Like make fun of how high-pitched my voice was. Stuff like that. And on top of all that, there was an absolute nightmare being in that room where the special education takes place. Because the students who are in there really did need help. And on top of all that, the faculty who were there had a combination of, acting like they didn't care because to them this was a glorifying babysitter's job. And when they actually did try and care, they essentially, talked down on us like we're little children when we're essentially teenagers. Well, I was anyway. We all were, but the fact that I'm able to contemplate this should tell you that there really wasn't a reason why I needed to be in there. And the sad part is, when it comes to the ridicule, I knew why they were making fun of me. I just didn't want to believe it. Because in the end, middle school and high school suck. They do. I told myself that after I graduated, I was never going to see any of these people ever again. In fact, thankfully, by the time I was a junior in high school, that wound up happening. I actually had, I was doing pretty well in sports in school, and I was really out there and being social. So I actually had gotten out of the special education program as a junior. I didn't even need to see any of those people my senior year. Unfortunately, by that point, the damage had already been done. I mean, I'm a senior, a veritable big man on campus, and you have freshmen calling me Rain Man. Do I even need to tell you how humiliating that is? And in the end, I knew that this was never going to go away. So that's when I began to contemplate suicide. Honestly, at that point, and keep in mind, I'm only contemplating this at the point. I have no idea what I'm going to do, or even where, or when, any of that stuff as to how I'm going to go about doing it. That was the case until fall of my senior year, when I had come back from a football game because I played football in high school. And we had just got stomped all over by this one school called Fayetteville Manlius, like 38-6 or something. It was bad. It was real bad. And so that Saturday afternoon, because at that time Morsheads didn't have a night stadium yet. We had every home game was a Saturday afternoon game. I get back to my parents' house, because remember, I'm still a teenager in high school. I'm still with my parents. I get home, and my mother walks out to me and tells me about how when my uncle had graduated from high school, he actually went to a place called Trinity Pauling, which is a prep school. And as my mother was explaining this to me, I'm thinking, okay, I just got back from me and my teammates getting beaten down in a football game. Do I look like I'm in any position to talk about my future right now? But I still decided to hear her out anyway. Yeah, needless to say, my folks have really never been great with timing. Or reading a situation for that matter, but that's neither here nor there. And she's telling me all this stuff like, I'd be in high school for another year, I'd be in an all-boys school, and there was two things going on in my mind as I was thinking this over. Because all throughout high school, there was this one sort of rival I had that I could never beat, and I thought Trinity Pond would finally put me over the edge. And on top of all that, shortly after I was out of the special education program, I had gotten a date to junior prom. And I thought, after Trinity Pond, I'd be able to ask that girl out proper. And, because I'd probably be the person that she deserved. Unfortunately, that was just the best case scenario. Really, I was just looking for a place to actually do it. Kill myself. I mean, it'd be a place several hours away. No one would really know me, so it'd be sad if I died, so no one was really going to miss me. In theory, anyway. And I think it really hit me just how bad I ought to feel about that. When I first went to Trinity Pond on that morning, September 2nd, 2008. It was a Tuesday. And my family and I are driving on the highway overlooking the city of Elmira. The city of Elmira would have been to my right. And we get a call from my grandmother. And she was calling me, telling me that, she loved me and she wished me well. And honestly, I began to break down and cry. Because deep down I thought this was going to be the last time I heard her voice. Well, as luck would have it, after I got to Trinity Pond, I pretty much literally hit the ground running. And I'm not kidding. I had to do cross country at Trinity Pond because Trinity Pond only has 4 postgraduates for football. So I could really only do either cross country or soccer. And I did cross country once, so might as well do it again. And it's not like I didn't train for cross country either. I mean, in the final 2 weeks up until I went to Trinity Pond, I actually worked out twice a day in preparation for it. And that's where things start to get a little bit better. Because I grew to be so incredibly busy, with doing cross country and doing the fall production of Black Comedy and getting my schoolwork done. I mean, you have to remember, I'm still in school. I have homework to do. I have to do it, right? And meeting some very extraordinary people, too. Days, weeks, months went by. We're already at, the Fall Athletic Honor Awards and finals week. And I completely forgot what my objective was. And in that time, I was actually putting in a lot more hard work than even I realized. Because, for one thing, I did a great job in the fall production of Black Comedy. For those of you wondering, I was the art dealer in that play, in case you're wondering. My grades were pretty solid overall. I think my lowest class average was an 82, and my highest was in the high 90s. So, yeah, pretty solid overall. And then there was with cross country, where during the Fall Athletic Honor Awards, because of everything I did during cross country. I mean, you have to understand, I was a football lineman at Horseheads, and I wind up making the top 7 on Trinity Pauling's cross country team. And it wasn't easy either. I had to fight tooth and nail to actually get that number 7 spot, actually. I actually won what's called the Sean McCabe Award, which is, a very prestigious award given to, a cross-country runner who goes above and beyond, what they have to do. I think it hit me as to how proud I ought to be of myself when the cross-country coach had walked up to me and said, "Your name is now engraved in Trinity Pauling history." Not to mention all the recognition and praise I had gotten from these gentlemen whom I've only known for a couple of months at best. So, as you can imagine, I was extremely proud of myself. And by all accounts, yeah, I still am. But it was during this time, I'm thinking, this isn't going to last. Sooner or later, these guys are going to completely forget all about what you did. And they'll move on, and it'll seem like whatever you did was nothing. Which was technically kind of true. I mean, really, I went to Trinity Pauling for wrestling. For sports, for anything sports related. Which I was doing well in wrestling too. But considering everything that happened, and how I realized that, yeah, I was going to commit suicide, wasn't I? Now I was going to find a way to damn well do it. The question is, when and how? I mean, this was during, Thanksgiving with, Christmas and the holiday season coming up. So, okay, I'll do it in January of 2009. Again, we're going home for Christmas. One last holiday with the family. My birthday is on December 28th. So I'll be celebrating turning 19 at the time. It gives me an opportunity to tell everyone I love them and stuff like that. And, there we go. That was the plan. So, I was supposed to kill myself back in January of 2009. And now it's December of 2021. So, what happened? What made me change my mind and ultimately say, not make me want to kill myself? Well, it happened on this very day, 13 years ago. I should probably take a moment to explain that this takes place over the span of several days, from roughly the 14th to the 18th, but it started today, the 14th. At least that's what I like to call it. So, I will never forget this day, as I remember all too well how it happened. It was a Saturday, December 14th, 2008, when I had to wake up early because the wrestling team had to go to the Loomis Chaffee dual meet tournament. Now, I had wrestled at Horseheads, but this was but we had never gone to a dual meet tournament before. So this was a brand new experience for me. And on top of all of that, this was my first time that my father was coming to see me wrestle for the blue and the gold. Blue and gold are Trinity Pauling colors, in case you wonder. And on top of all that, one of the teams we ended up wrestling against was our old rival, Avon Old Farms. Another all-boys school. Which I actually want to point out, one of the reasons why Trinity Pauling would have been perfect for me was, it's bad enough I'm getting, and Horn says, at least I was getting rejected by women there, but at least that was a numbers game. There at Trinity Pauling, Trinity Pauling's an all-boys school. I have nothing. Sorry. Listen, this is going to be a very emotional video. I have to ease the tension at some point. So, at this dual meet tournament, we went up against our old rival, Avon Old Farms. And a week before, at the Canterbury Christmas Invitational, I actually lost to the kid from Avon in sudden death overtime. That's down to the wire, the last possible minute. It's always a heartbreaker to lose that, man. So with an opportunity to face a kid who I lost to the week before, with my father cheering me on in the stands, you better believe I wasn't going to let this opportunity pass me by. So I wound up beating that kid. And I never actually lost to that kid ever again. Although, I got to know him over that time, and he turned out to be really nice. I wonder how he's doing, actually. Anyway. After the dual meet tournament, my father took me back to Trinity Pauling, and he was going to visit for the weekend anyway, with my mom, but my mom was going to come the next day. And, we were going to have, that night, as he's driving me home, we actually went to a place I recommended that I had been to on a dorm family dinner called the Putnam Diner, or advisor-advisee dinner, called the Putnam Diner. It's actually a really great diner. It's actually one of those types of diners that serves breakfast all day, like 24 hours a day. It's really great. It was actually a really nice day, overall. It's at this point I'd like to point out that I really wish the story ended here. Because that's a great day, but you're probably thinking that's really no reason why I would, change my mind of committing suicide. And now things take a very, very, very downward spiral. It was the next morning, Sunday. Now, at Trinity Pauling, we had Sunday chapel, but sometimes we didn't. And this is actually a weekend where we weren't supposed to have Sunday chapel. So I was in, the Dunbar Dormitory Lounge, watching TV, laying on the couch, just waiting for my father to arrive, and we'd spend the day together. And at some point, my dorm parent walked in, and he had told me to get on over to the chapel. Now, I always had respect for my dorm parent, or really any authority figure, but I could definitely trust my dorm parent. I'm sure there'd be a logical explanation why I had to go. So, I got my jacket on and walked on over to the chapel. And I sat in one of the usual seats that I would sit in otherwise. And I'll never forget what I saw right before the headmaster walked in. I looked over to my left, and I'd seen one of my friends there. And actually one of my classmates. He was in my theater arts class. And I looked to my left, and this person naturally had a very pale complexion, but this was different. It really looked as if he'd seen a ghost. Like, he looked as if he was on the verge of crying. I didn't really think anything of it. And then the headmaster walked in. And got to the podium of the chapel and started saying some words. For the life of me, I couldn't possibly tell you what he said up there, with the exception of what he said at the end. Because he had told us that last night one of our brothers had died. His name was Andrew Einstein. At that moment, there was a collective shock of, did that really just happen? Did we really just hear this? And what would begin after was just a whirlwind of emotions. Plans had to be changed. That day we were actually supposed to have holiday, because this was the final weekend before winter break. Like, we were supposed to have holiday celebrations, big parties and such. There was going to be a final family. There was going to be a final sit-down dinner that consisted of, prime rib and stuff. So things were about to rev up for the holiday season big. And then we get this just horrible news. And the sad part is, I actually knew who Andrew Einstein was, because he was my teammate in cross country. And not only was he my teammate, but it was argued that he was the fastest runner we had. And he was a postgraduate, just like I was too. I actually will never forget the day I made him laugh that one time in cross-country practice. We're actually doing our warm-up stretches, and we're coming up with funny names for the dormitories on Trinity Pauling's campus. And I had come up with the name Bar Stoners, and he laughed at that. But we probably just came across that he was, kind of stiff. No, he was actually a really nice guy. It's just, he and I we weren't really close, but we had, we were teammates, of course. But, I was at Trinity Pauling more for, wrestling and track, where he was there for pretty much lacrosse. And he was a really great lacrosse player too. At a time when lacrosse at Trinity Pauling was huge. I mean, by all accounts, lacrosse at Trinity Pauling still is huge, but prior to arriving at Trinity Pauling, they had just won New England's in lacrosse. For a matter of perspective, winning New England's in lacrosse would be the equivalent of Horseheads winning states. So when I tell you that this was huge, I'm telling you this was huge. And during those last couple of days before we all went home for the holiday break, there was just a time of reflection and, talking about wonderful memories we all had of him. And there was even a funeral service that, Trinity Pauling had for him. I mean, we are an Episcopalian, school, and we have an Episcopalian chapel, so, have a proper funeral. And his parents came. And it was actually really interesting because there was the school lector, the priest, and there was also a rabbi there too, because his mother was Episcopalian, which, for those of you who don't know, Episcopalian is another form of Christianity. And his father was Jewish, which, his last name was Einstein, but, I'm not necessarily going to know he's Jewish based on that. Not for nothing, but you can't really walk up to someone saying, "Hi, are you Jewish?" See, that sounds rude, right? So, there you go. If you had told me what happened after that funeral that we had at Trinity Pauling, if you had told me that I was about to see was going to happen, I never would have believed you. But I walk out of the chapel, as we all did, and we heard the school's a cappella group, the Trinitones, sing the school's alma mater. And I remember seeing just one of the most beautiful things I think I'd ever see. All of my brothers had banded together in a time of Great Depression. They're hugging, they're embracing, they're crying. There were guys who were bigger and stronger than I was, and they are just broken and hugging each other. We were there for each other. We had each other's backs. Sound familiar? You tell me that there's an individual out there who doesn't believe that men of different colors, races, religion can't band together in a time of Great Depression. And I'll show you 300 gentlemen who will be happy to prove you wrong about that. And it was at that moment, two things are going through my head. The first was, would these gentlemen be weeping for me like they would for him? Because Andrew Einstein was actually really popular with him being, good at lacrosse and stuff. Not to mention, especially yesterday, I explained what happened with me. I thought I had every right to do what he did in comparison, but I didn't. And so, would these gentlemen be weeping for me like they did for him? I don't know. And I told myself, and this is the second thing, I'll never know. Because I'm not going to do that to these guys. I couldn't. And to this day, I haven't. While Andrew Einstein's death was tragic, he saved my life. Through my brother's collective unity, my brothers saved my life. In fact, it was from that moment on, that's when I knew we were all brothers. Because we all got together. We were there for each other. And as tragic as that was, if it happened again, you better believe we'd do it again. You're probably thinking at this point that this story actually has a happy ending. Well, really, if the story ever does end, it's because I someday tragically die. I mean, again, it's my story, first of all. And second of all, listen, I am not naive enough to believe that I'm going to live forever. I'm not naive enough to believe that we're all going to live forever. Heck, a couple weeks ago, I broke down in depression because, I'd seen my father holding my nephews and, realizing that one day he's going to die. So I know it's going to happen. But I assure you, it's not going to happen for a very, very, very long time. And I'm certainly not going anywhere. And again, you would think that, things were uplifting since then, but really not always. In fact, there have been times it was just downright awful. I mean, I could really go on and on and on about all the bad things that had happened since then. I mean, I could just start by talking about the fact that, we all banded together after Andrew died. But we had to go home for winter break. We still had to go back. In the cold, depressing time of year where we just celebrated the holiday season and now we got to be away from our families again. Not to mention, schoolwork is still schoolwork. Life can be rough on that, It was during the spring semester, or spring trimester, I should say, April, when we actually got a visit from Andrew's parents. And his father had come up and talked to us for a little bit. He had talked more about Andrew's life and how he really loved the cross. He was really big into his home state of South Carolina. So, ladies, in case you're wondering, yes, he had the accent. And how when they had a funeral for him in his home state proper, hundreds, if not thousands of people were there. The governor of South Carolina came. Yeah. The governor of South Carolina came to his funeral. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's sad because of the circumstance, but, if the governor, I live in New York, so our governor is kind of, but if he came to my funeral, I still think that's pretty cool. I mean, I'd be dead, so I really wouldn't be able to do anything. But then, just knowing that he was going to be there, that'd be pretty cool. Or actually, my governor's a she now, but yeah, you get the idea. It was actually from that moment on where it was on my bucket list to one day go to the state of South Carolina, where Andrew's grave is. I would bring a bouquet of flowers, specifically the state flower of South Carolina, which, fun fact, is actually known as the yellow jessamine. It's actually a really pretty flower. You should look it up. I'd bring a bouquet to, his gravesite. And I would say these words. Words that I have said many times before. And they never lose their significance or meaning. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be ever at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rain fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may the Lord hold you in the palm of his hand. I can tell you right now that my life really hasn't been all that great since then. It hasn't. I've lost 2 jobs in the pursuit of becoming a nationally certified phlebotomist. I've had people in my family die, including my grandfather on my mother's side. Not to mention, we're living in a pandemic that, as optimistic as we like to be, it's not going away anytime soon. But in spite of all that, there's been some things that happened that are good. Damn good. And where do I even begin with that? Well, how about the fact that in spite of everything, I did graduate from Trinity College. I got myself a college degree from Gettysburg College, a bachelor's in health sciences. I got to see my brother get engaged, get married, and start a family. And I will admit, stuff before, during, and after that wedding, behind the scenes, I hated it. But I tell you what, I had never seen a union more beautiful and pure. And knowing that 2 people were going to be together forever, more than my brother and his wife. I assure you. I rode my bike 100 miles for charity 4 times for the Tour de Cuba. 2 of those years was for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and the next 2 years were for the Food Bank of the Southern Tier. I've ran 4 wine glass marathons. I've dropped anywhere between 95 and 100 pounds, and I've kept that weight off And that was all me. No one ever thought that I'd ever be able to do that. But I did. And now, no one can ever say that I couldn't do it, because I did. In spite of all that, though, in spite of all the good stuff and all the other personal stuff that was good that happened too, like being able to see stuff like, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 and Avengers Endgame, or becoming a fan, or reigniting my love of the series of One Piece, or even doing these videos every day. If there is one thing I get to say I do, was that as of November 7th, 2019, and as of August 23rd, 2021, I became an uncle to 3 beautiful nephews. And those 3 boys are the reason why I wake up with a smile, like it or not, every single day. Because they're worth it. They're worth living for. And even now, life isn't all perfect. I'm still single. No girlfriend or anything. And I do sort of work at a job where the only good thing is I get to see my dad a lot. But you know what? I'm alive, and I get to be able to say I do that. I get to be able to say I do all that. And no one can ever take that away from me. And I'll be damned if I let anything do. And I'll be damned if I let anything do. Now you know why I brought this thing, because gosh, I need a hug right now. A couple of years ago, I actually got in contact with Andrew's father, because this is during a time way back when I did started doing videos, I was doing birthday shout-outs, and I kind of wanted to honor Andrew on his birthday, and I actually didn't have a Facebook before he died. But I'm friends with his father on Facebook, so I asked him when his birthday was, and it turns out it's actually on Flag Day. So I get to say that too. I can't really get to say I can do whatever I want, because I can't say I fly, obviously, stuff like that. We gotta be realistic here, But if I ever had to weigh between all the bad that's happened since over the last 13 years, with all the good, and believe me, it's still been really depressing. Again, admittedly, a large part of that depression came from, and I said this yesterday, waking up every day thinking, oh crap, I'm still considered an autistic retard, aren't I? I mean, that's an even greater thing. I got to live long enough to actually get proper confirmation as to what's really wrong with me. And now I actually have a new lease on life. I mean, yeah, you could make a case that, again, depression and pragmatic communication disorder are still pretty bad. And I said this yesterday too. Yeah, I really am only able to say this now because, I'm not considered on the autistic spectrum anymore. But you know what? I spent years doing nothing but sympathizing with my oppressors and showing no empathy for those who actually do need help. So needless to say, that's no longer going to be the case. All I can really do now is try and take one day at a time. And if I ever, do see anyone who needs help with anything, you better believe I'm going to come running. And that's one thing I want to point out. Of all times, this is, of course, the worst time of year to ever be thinking about, depression and suicide and stuff. Especially when you think you'd want to talk about the opposite of that. But if you ever feel like you're staring into the abyss, please, for the love of God, go and talk to someone. Talk to a family member. Talk to a friend. Talk to me. Talk to me. I've been there. So I know. I know better than quite a few people, actually. And that's why I will forever continue to say that I am very humbled that I made this video for all of you guys to watch and enjoy. Beyond humbled, I made this video for all of you guys to watch and enjoy, actually. I am very hopeful that you all take what I said today as a message and spread that word and use it to try and help others. And always remember, if you ever do need help with anything, to try and talk to someone who loves and respects you and will do anything they can to help you. And if you personally know me, you better believe that, like my brothers did before me, I will always have your back. So take care. And, I never really did do my low, my high, and my active kindness, did I? Well, I guess I could really do that before I sign off. I guess my low was the fact that with a video like today, and yesterday even, there was a lot of stuff to talk about. And of course I tried doing everything I can to explain everything as best I could. But I'm so worried that I forgot something. As for my high, I had gotten so many words of encouragement, praise, support from a lot of people after what I said yesterday. And I'm beyond grateful for that. There is nothing I could say or express enough that could emphasize how grateful I am about it, actually. And my act of kindness is with my new lease on life. You better believe if I see anyone who needs help, I'm definitely going to bust my ass to make sure I do help them. So take care. And in the words of my perspectives in drugs teacher, make good choices. Thank you.